diagonals, and all the pawns, like you see in this position here, are sort of locked and fixed in this position. Like white can't push any of his pawns without just immediately losing one. And the same for black. If black ever pushed this pawn, white would just take it for free. So the pawn structure is very rigid. It's not flexible. And when you get that, that means you have a closed position. So what do you do here? There's not really much you can do other than A, call it a day and offer a draw, or B, try to orchestrate a breakthrough. And the best way to learn how to do that is just by looking at a few instructive examples where one side generated a really nice breakthrough. And eventually you will gain an understanding of what it means to break through in a closed position. So in this first example, as you've already seen, all the pawns are locked up, and even though this knight can sort of jump around into black's position, there are no targets for it to attack. Right? The knight by itself cannot win any of black's pawns and open up the position that way. So in this position, the player playing white played a really powerful move, b5. So this move is a pawn sacrifice. White is sacrificing a pawn in order to open up the position at least a little bit and then get closer to breaking through and infiltrating into black's side of the board. Right? So the first thing to notice is that white is threatening to win this pawn here, thanks to his rook on a1. So that means that black cannot just ignore it and sit on his position. If he takes this way, then the d5 pawn will hang, and after white captures it with his knight, he'll move his knight back and he'll be able to start pushing his central pawns forward. And white will have a really big advantage because his central pawns will be really strong and supported by all of his pieces. So black is basically forced to play a takes b5. Now white has opened up the a file, which is a small accomplishment, but it's not clear exactly how he's going to proceed. So he plays rook a7. Okay, now we kind of see the point of sacrificing the pawn. White wants to win back this pawn here, and after that the position will be slightly more opened up, and he can use his pieces to infiltrate into black's position and start picking up weaknesses. Okay, so black sits. Black really has nothing to do here, which is often the case when the position is closed up and you're the side with less space. We know black has less space here because of this pawn on c5. Right? White is just controlling more space with his two advanced pawns to the 5th rank. So black pretty much has to sit back and hope that white won't be able to break through. But none of his pieces can really do anything, and he doesn't have any breakthroughs of his own. So now white plays rook h1, and he just brings the other rook to the a file. And now king e2. What I want you guys to remember, and this is a really important point, is that when the position is locked up, you often have a lot of time to organize a breakthrough or to increase the pressure. Right? If you know your opponent has nothing to do that's active, he can't increase the power of his pieces anyhow, he can't target any weaknesses that you have, then you know you have all the time in the world, and make sure that you can position your pieces in the best spot and slowly increase the pressure and try to win the game. Black plays knight f8, and now I want you guys to stop the video and find a way for white to increase the pressure. Right? Find a way to improve one of white's pieces so that you can target a weakness in black's position. Okay, so the move white played was knight d2. And this is a very strong idea, and I'm pretty sure that the player playing white who played this move b5, sacrificing the pawn, realized he would have this knight maneuver later on to increase the pressure. And the point of this move is that the knight is coming to b3 and to a5, where it's going to attack the b7 weakness. And black is going to have a really hard time defending against this. So knight d7 and knight b3. If black trades, this is really not in his best interest, and it really doesn't help him at all, because after white recaptures, now the knight is going to come to c5, which is an even stronger square, and black will have no way of defending this b7 pawn. So after white wins that b7 pawn, he's going to have a very strong passed b6 pawn, which he will then use to win the game. Right? Once white breaks through, all of his pieces will be more active in a somewhat open position. So that'll be very strong. So black has no choice here but to just sit around and wait. So they played king e8. So now knight a5, and now black decided to trade, and rook d7. So the pawn is defended for the moment. Okay, so white played the move knight b3. Very strong. Just putting his knight on a better square where it attacks the b7 pawn and controls the d7 square so that the rook cannot stay in this defensive position. Right? The knight is also controlling the e6 square, which we'll see in a second is important too. So e6 and knight c5. Black played this move e6 so that his rook could have more squares along the 7th rank. But with the knight on c5 and white's rooks on the a file, white's position is so strong that black cannot really use this. So let's say he plays rook e7. Now white wins with the very strong idea of rook a8. He's trading off this defensive rook and bringing his second rook into the attack. After black takes, and moves his king, white is just going to play here and win this pawn and queen his b pawn to win the game. And again, black's bishop is pretty helpless and can't contribute anything to the game. So for that reason, black played the move bishop f8. Now I think it would be a really big mistake to take this rook on d7. The point is that after black recaptures, white has no way to add to the attack of the b7 pawn. Okay, if he plays rook a8 trying to trade rooks, black will just play here with his king, and white has no way of infiltrating the position at all. This knight on c5 is basically white's best piece because it attacks so many squares, which means that you should definitely think twice before trading it away, even for a rook. So in this position, white played knight takes e6. Now king f7 and rook a8. This is just a fairly simple tactic that once black trades rooks, and if he takes this knight, white plays rook takes f8. So this is what happened in the game. Black really had no other option at this point. This rook couldn't go to d8 to support the other rook because of the knight on e6. White's position is still much better, and that's because his rook has infiltrated into black's position, he has more space, and he's going to be able to bring his king into the attack through the dark squares. So it's not exactly clear that white is completely winning, but at the very least he's made great progress and he's very close to finishing the game. So king e7, rook b8. Black has nothing to do but to sit and wait for white to improve the position of his king. And now this is the last moment in the game I want you guys to again stop the video and try to figure out how to break through here for white. Okay, so in the game, white played the move rook takes b7. So the point is that after black captures this rook, white's going to play king takes c6, and he's going to use his king and support his b pawn to queen, and the only way black will be able to stop it is by giving back his extra rook to stop the pawn. Okay, for example, let's say rook b8, king c7, rook moves, and now b7. So white is just queening very quickly and forcing black to give up his rook. So even if you play something like rook d7 check, this doesn't really help, because white is eventually just going to be able to queen. And now after this happens, we reach a king and pawn endgame where white has this extra pawn. And this position is definitely winning for white, not because of the extra pawn, but because his king has already infiltrated black's position and is much more active. A sample line here could be, let's say, king d6, now b4, fixing the pawns, and eventually white is just going to bring his king around this way and win this pawn. And you can stop the video and analyze for yourself. There's really nothing black can do here to save the game. White is going to win the g6 pawn, then probably the f5 pawn, and queen his extra pawns. So that's about it for today's video. I hope you guys learned something about how to break through in a closed position. The main things to remember is that A, you have lots of time, so you can take your time and organize your pieces properly so that they are at their most effective position. And then when you do break through, what you're looking for is targets and weaknesses that your pieces can try to attack, right? If you need to give up a pawn so that you can get access to your opponent's position, then usually that's a pretty good idea and definitely worth investigating. And so with that, I wish you guys good luck in your future games and wish you good luck in orchestrating those awesome breakthroughs. Thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see you around on chess.com.